Hey there, everybody. It's Vera Wylde. I know I kind of went like a little bit dark today, but we're into the latter half of the year. Felt appropriate at this point. So, I wanted to talk about something that I've brought up and addressed intermittently in comments and offhandedly in other videos. But I had an experience recently that gave me reason to think I should probably put my feelings about this firmly on the record. So, a little bit of context for this. Longer than I actually know how to keep track of, folks have, usually in comments, suggested that I should, quote unquote, debate certain people who hold views in opposition, to me, like to the fact that I exist, as I state that I do. They, the kinds of people who look at me, hear what I say I am, and just go, no. So I've always resisted doing that. And I have replied to these in comments, but I actually had occasion to directly think about why it is I don't do this, and to really consider that and make the determination of whether or not I was going to stand by that. Now, as I give you the context of what it was that happened, I am not going to name anyone's name because honestly, the specifics of who it is I'm talking about are irrelevant to what I have to say. The situation, the circumstances, and the things that I'm going to talk about apply regardless of who these people involved were. But I was basically given an opportunity to have... It was framed as a conversation, but by the nature of it, it was probably going to be something closer to a debate between myself and another YouTuber who holds those kind of views, that the sort of person that I say I am isn't real and for various reasons can't exist. And if there was ever going to be a time that I was going to say yes to this, it would have been these circumstances, because I was not approached directly by the person I would actually be having the conversation with. I was approached by a third party who was someone I already knew and had a certain level of trust built up with. That person was going to moderate the discussion. It was that third person's channel that the video would end up going up on, which means they would have the power of the edit, and I was not placing my fate in the hands of somebody who I didn't believe that I could trust to not cut and reshape my arguments into something that isn't what I said, or to strip out context or what have you. So if I was ever going to be comfortable doing this, this would have been it. I still turned it down, and I want to address the philosophical reasons why, which again don't have a ton to do with who the specific people were. The thing is, no matter how you frame it, whether you say, oh, it's a conversation, we're just going to talk, what have you, that's not really what's going on. What you're asking me to do is to come in and make an argument for my existence. And some people might find it odd that I don't wish to engage with that, given that I've made multiple videos that are effectively taking what are often thrown at me as bad faith arguments and answering them as if they were good faith questions. So you would think, well, why wouldn't you do that in an active conversation? And the thing is, I would, but not publicly and not recorded. So the truth be told, if it would have been possible for me to meet with this person in a private scenario with no recording equipment and no audience, I would actually really love to have that conversation with them. I would love to have the chance to try and get a better sense of what the issues are that they take with me, as opposed to, us just kind of talking points in our own videos that are clearly contradictory. And I would like the chance to try and get them a better sense of why I say that I am what I say I am. But for the 1-2 punch of reasons of A, I live in the absolute middle of nowhere, and B, the plague is still an ongoing concern, that was never going to be logistically possible for me to meet this person, in person, which meant the only option was to do it online. And while you could have theoretically said, well, we won't record it, whatever else, it is a little too much loss of control for that. But I would have actually been very happy to have that conversation, to have the chance to speak with someone one-on-one, to see if I can get them to at least understand me, if not approve of me. But I won't do it publicly. I won't do it in this medium. I won't have those conversations as live conversations. And the reason why ultimately has to do with an inherent power imbalance and disproportionate stakes for those involved. Because if theoretically I was to enter into a conversation like that, me and the other person would be defending our positions. They would be defending a position that basically I'm either mentally ill or lying or doing this for attention or just some justification for why this is not valid. And I would have to argue the position that yes, it is. And that sounds equitable. Sounds like a standard debate, doesn't it? Well, one person, here's the issue. One person says yes, one person says no. Isn't that what debate is? Well, no. Not when what they are arguing in favor of is a belief, and what I have to argue is my existence, the validity of my lived experience, and my ability and right to be seen as I am. Worst case scenario for them is that they look a little foolish for holding the position, or maybe they get their mind changed to a certain degree and they have to grapple with any content that they've made that expressed their previous point. And I'm not going to say there's no risk involved in that. There is going to be a hit to potentially, again, for what is their worst case scenario, a potential hit to credibility, a loss of certain audience, what have you. For me, what's at risk if I don't present my case well is that I am invalid, not only in the eyes of this other person, but in the eyes of the audience. I have far more to lose. The worst that the other person in that scenario would have to lose is basically lose face a little bit. I have the potential to lose people viewing me with dignity, looking at me with any sense of validity or compassion. If I screw that up, the worst case scenario for me is effectively erasure of my identity. And also, the very nature of that kind of a debate is an inherent power imbalance even outside the stakes. Because the point of argument forces me into a defensive. And they can just attack and attack and attack. And I have to address anything that they throw at me. Whereas all they have to do if I come back with something is say, no, you're wrong, or no, I don't believe that. They hold the power in that situation to simply shut me down and deny me and say no. And again, it is possible in those circumstances for someone holding those views to be, for lack of a politer way to put it, be made a fool. To have their views appear foolish if they present them badly. But again, then we're back to the stakes. And that is why not only will I not take part in those kinds of debates, I would caution anybody else who is given the opportunity to do so. I'm not going to tell you not to do it. And there are instances where it has been done and hasn't had a net positive gain, but be very careful. Because you're walking into a situation where you are already on the back foot, you are already at a disadvantage, and you are putting up far more in terms of what you risk if you can't make your case than they do. you are effectively the defense and them the prosecution. Worst case for them is they don't make their case, they don't get their conviction. Worst case for you, metaphorically, you are convicted and then punished. It's disproportionate. It's not debate. Not in the sense that people tend to think of it. And if people hear that rationale and still want to label me a coward, label me a coward. Fine. Anyone who was going to do that probably was not going to listen to me for anything that I had to say anyway. The closest that I've ever come to doing something like this, and these are circumstances that might happen again, was I appeared on Riley Grace and her channel. She brought me in basically after I did my videos talking about not having dysphoria, despite, decades now of gender fluidity and taking actions to some degree, transition. Not binary transition. I am not a trans woman. I still don't claim to be. But the reason I was willing to have that conversation with her is because she came to me in the spirit of wanting to understand. And I hope she'll be okay with me saying this, but she did come to me initially from a starting position of, I don't understand how you can claim this identity and claim to not have dysphoria. So she did come from a disbelieving place, but she came to me in the spirit of, can you help me understand? Because right now I don't. As opposed to coming to me from a position of, prove me wrong. And that makes all the difference. I don't know if people actually care about why I don't do these debates, why I avoid them, despite the fact that I want to have these conversations with these people, just not publicly. Well, this is why. And maybe you don't care, maybe it doesn't matter, but that's the nature of this channel, isn't it? It's largely stuff that I need to process and get off my own chest. And maybe it was helpful for you. Maybe it was insightful. Maybe it's more ammunition for you to hurl at me. I'm used to all of it. Thank you very much for watching, for listening, and please remember that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved.